Welcome to In Good Company, where relationships drive results, with your host, Lisa Kilray. In each episode, we explore how great leaders build trust, inspire teams, and turn meaningful connections into real success.
Hi, I'm Lisa Kilray, host of In Good Company, where relationships drive results. Today's episode is sponsored by WSI eResults. At WSI, we help manufacturers and B2B organizations build the strategic foundation they need for AI-driven digital growth. Our work spans digital strategy and roadmaps, SEO, content development, and multi-channel digital programs designed to drive measurable bottom-line results. A recent client, or I should say, a client recently told us, "I'm so glad we started working with you when we did." And the reason they said that is because we built the right foundation early. They are now being discovered across AI search platforms and attracting high-value buyers globally for their multi-million-dollar pieces of equipment. To learn more, visit www.wsi-manufacturing-marketing.com. Today's conversation is about AI in a practical sense. Not hype, not trends, but what it actually takes to implement AI in a way that drives measurable business impact. If you're a business owner or executive trying to separate signal from noise, this episode is for you. Today, I'm fortunate to be joined by Ken McLoud. Ken is the founder of Laconic Tech, where he helps companies design and build custom AI software that drives lead generation, increases operational efficiency, and in some cases, entirely new revenue streams. Before launching Laconic Tech, Ken spent 15 years as an engineer working with global brands such as Toyota, Lockheed Martin, and Bose. He believes implementing new technology is a three-part equation: strategy, implementation, and follow-through. He's also known for solving real business problems rather than simply building what a client asks for. That approach has led to measurable outcomes, including one AI system that increased a client's profit by more than $28,000 per month. Ken joins us from New Hampshire. Ken, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. So let's just start with, talking a little bit what AI actually means. Ken, what would you say when a business owner says, "We need AI"? What do they actually think that means, and how often is that actually the right starting point?
Yeah. No, when somebody says something like "we need AI," that's actually a pretty big red flag. Like that's a classic indication of solution in search of a problem thinking. Right? So we don't want to attack these problems as we've got to use AI somewhere, let's go find a place to use AI. Instead, we want to find the actual business problem and then ask ourselves, how can we attack this business problem in a new way now that we have these tools that probably wasn't even available to us a year ago?
Okay. So you build AI systems, not just surface level integrations. For listeners who are not technical, how would you explain the difference between layering AI on top of a process versus architecting it into the business?
Yeah, that's a good question. So our systems are almost always custom web applications. So we've got a web app standing up on a server that you're going to access through your browser when you need to interface with it. And
Mm-hmm.
then we have a flexibility from there to tie into all sorts of different APIs that your business is operating in. So we've got uh, this whole layer of orchestration between the AI and whatever business services we're connecting to, rather than just a surface layer, if this, then that kind of connection.
Okay. And what kinds of problems are most commonly brought to you to solve?
That's another good question. Okay, I'd say one of the most common ones is the kind of repetitive, time-consuming task. So we have this
Mhm.
report that we have to generate for these clients every month, or we have this paperwork that needs to get filed every month, and it consumes all this time in order to generate it. That's probably one
Mhm.
of the most common. The other pattern we've been seeing a lot lately is AI-powered lead generation. So everybody's familiar with sort of the traditional style lead magnet, where you might offer a PDF or a slide deck on the top 10 things to know about this. So there's kind of a new generation of these sorts of tools that we're building out where we would gather some information about the prospect, either through like a simple questionnaire or perhaps by scanning their website, scanning their ads library, something like that. And
Mhm.
then we can apply the the client's knowledge to that information and generate a personalized report. So now rather than just general top 10 things to do about why, we have specifically like top 10 insights about your website or top 10 recommendations we do given your situation.
Okay, very interesting. So, I mean, that's probably an example of something that can really change performance, whether that's pipeline growth, operational efficiency, or profitability. Well, what did that actually produce for your client?
Yeah, so the main point of those lead magnet systems is to get more calls booked, really. So we've got
Hmm.
to, obviously, they don't drive their own traffic. We've got to have some strategy for driving traffic to those lead magnets, like email marketing or paid campaigns. And then once we drive traffic to those assets, the outcome is getting calls booked with the sales team.
Right. Okay. So as I mentioned in your bio, you've got a pretty impressive background working for more than 15 years inside organizations such as Toyota, Lockheed Martin, and Bose. What did working inside those environments teach you about systems thinking and disciplined execution?
Hmm. So I think a lot of what I picked up there is particularly useful when working with larger clients, right? So there's a big
Hmm.
difference between the way a 10-person shop operates, like maybe a smaller marketing agency, versus the way a large manufacturer with hundreds or thousands of employees operate. You
Hmm.
can move a lot faster when you're dealing with the small shop. And when you're dealing with the large one, it just takes a lot more of almost sort of negotiating between legal's got to sign off on this and IT needs to approve of that. So experience navigating that world with big corporations certainly helped.
Right. I can see how that would be very beneficial. And when you stepped out to launch Laconic Tech, what gap did you see in the market?
Oh, so it was definitely this. So this was as AI was taking off in the last couple of years
Yeah.
here. And so everybody is interested in employing it, but the vast majority of solutions are people opening up Chat GPT and using it to help write emails or something like that. These tools are infinitely more powerful than that. We can use them to make actual business decisions, but most people just don't see how to do that because they're just looking at a Chat GPT web interface where they can punch a prompt in. So the
Right.
gap is really the ability to take that and do valuable business work with it.
Right. So, I mean, clearly artificial intelligence is highly technical and it's much more than, ChatGPT or Perplexity or Claude. How did your engineering background influence the way you approach business strategy today?
Oh, definitely systematic thinking. So like that, uh, like we were talking about earlier, that you don't want to be a solution in search of a problem. Instead, you want to step back, think of the entire system, and find the wise place in that system to attack. The actual constraint of the business is where you ought to be putting your effort. Because if you put it almost anywhere else, it's wasted effort.
Yeah. So you described technology implementation as strategy implementation and follow through. Where do most companies break down? Is it flawed strategy at the beginning, poor execution, or lack of adoption after launch?
So there's definitely tripping points in all three of those.
Right.
Uh, I'd say probably the most common one though is failure to think through that strategy part up front. Like the vast majority of systems that I've seen that didn't go well, it was because when we were thinking of them in the early stages, we did not do enough system level thinking to think about the real constraints of the business, and instead just somebody, usually an important decision maker, showed up with an idea that they were real hot on, and then we attacked that idea. And then only in hindsight did you realize that was not actually the wisest place to be investing time.
Okay. So you're known for not building what the client asks for, but solving the real problem. How do you uncover the root issue?
Yeah, so that's actually that's a part I have a lot of fun with. So we really need to. It's a little bit like if you were to walk into a doctor and say, "Hey, doctor, I need a triple bypass." Hopefully, the doctor's going to say, "Hold on, back up. I'm not cutting your chest open yet. We've got to run some tests and ask some questions about your
Right,
symptoms and back up." So it's that process of almost everyone who I engage with at first will have one particular thing they're real hot on, but then we immediately need to back up and zoom out and look at the entire business. And first we try to determine whether this business is demand constrained or supply constrained. And then once we determine that, we dive into what the specific demand or supply constraint is and see if there's some way that we can attack it.
okay, awesome. So when does AI move from experimentation to measurable revenue impact? What has to change within an organization for that shift to happen?
So man, it's a really case by case specific situation, right? So
Hmm.
if we're talking about measurable revenue impact, then it's probably something that's on the demand generation side. So the real thing we need to do there is, if it's a larger organization, get over whatever hurdles between IT and legal and any other leadership that we need to get over in order to actually present this sort of tool to the public. That's most often the hurdle you're seeing with that sort of thing.
Right. Okay. And so for leaders listening who are considering AI investment this year, what questions should they be asking before they move forward?
Oh, it's the stuff we've been talking about where you want to consider the actual business problems and most importantly, what are the most important business problems? What are the issues where if just that one thing would be true, then the business would materially change, right? These are the bottlenecks, the constrictions, the constraints of the business. Those are the places to be attacking. Anything that isn't one of those constrictions is just going to show a much weaker ROI.
Right. I agree. So I love talking about AI as a revenue generator. I think one of the most overlooked aspects of AI is that it can become a revenue generator, not just a cost saving tool. When does AI become a product instead of an internal system?
So I mean, for certain companies, it's certainly already a product, right? For all of the main providers, it's a product, and for a lot of traditional software companies, they're now leaning heavily on making those features their products. So to a certain extent, that has already happened. Uh, we're gonna basically slowly see that move down the tech stack, right? So I had to call a plumber the other day, and I got an AI answering service essentially for the plumber. So we're going to see this AI technology move further and further away from Silicon Valley and further down the tech stack into normal businesses over time here.
Okay. I know that I mentioned earlier on in the episode during your bio that um, you developed a system that increased one of your clients' profit by over $28,000 per month. Without sharing anything confidential, what made that implementation successful? And what was it at a very high level?
Yep. So this is a system that looks at opportunities that come across their desk and then tries to determine which will be the most profitable based on a series of guidelines. And in the past, they had humans who this was sort of half of their job, right? So they would watch these opportunities come across the metaphorical desk while they were also handling a half dozen other tasks, and kind of as time permitted, do due diligence on these opportunities and then place bids on them when it seemed appropriate, when it looked like it was going to be a profitable job. So there we built out a fully automated system so that every time one of these opportunities comes across the desk, we gather up all the supporting information we can, making a few API calls. We then send all that information off to an AI along with a document about how to determine whether or not this is likely to be profitable. And if it is likely to be profitable, how to determine a bid. Then, if the AI decides yes, we should bid and gives a price, the system automatically places the bid. So now uh, instead of these opportunities being addressed kind of ad hoc as available, 100% of them are being addressed and 100% of the due diligence is being done every time.
Wow, that's impressive. Nice work. So when you implemented this, did it work immediately? Or did it evolve over time and become better as AI has become more powerful?
Yep. So there's two effects there. One, you certainly see every time we get a new generation of models, they're definitely solidly getting better. We see better performance every
Yeah,
time we get a new generation of models. But the other thing is with systems like this, we'll always start out with a base system, and the system will include both the prompts and the code we write around the prompts that we think is going to work well. And then we need to start running some real world data through it, so flowing some water through the well. And we will almost always find that it's not behaving exactly the way that we thought it would when we initially set it up. So then there's this period of, at first, there's quite a bit of adjustment to both the prompt and the code to get it in line with how we want it to behave. And then you see that kind of decay over time. So in say the first week, there's a lot of frenetic activity around tuning it in. Second week, much less, and then kind of week three out, you're just handling occasional weird new edge cases as they pop up.
right, right. So a lot of our listeners are B2B organizations, manufacturers specifically. Where do you see the biggest untapped potential or opportunity for AI right now for those types of companies?
Yeah, so I've got a couple clients in manufacturing, and probably the most exciting opportunity here is in data analysis. Right? So we
Okay.
can take an AI agent that has the ability to write and execute code, set it up in a little sandbox environment, and give it access to the enormous databases that most manufacturers have from their history of running these jobs. And we can then let business leaders ask the agent arbitrary business questions. So we don't necessarily need a report for scrap rate. Instead, a business leader can just sit down at the keyboard and start asking it questions about scrap rate that you never would have thought to bake into a report, right? How does
Okay.
scrap rate differ on Monday versus Friday? How does it differ on first shift versus second shift? What if we're running part one, then part two versus part two, then part one? All these, you can think of a million different iterations of these sorts of manufacturing questions,
Right.
and you'd never be able to build them all into a report, but you can ask these to a sufficiently powerful agent. It can then write code in order to query the database to get the information it needs. And then it can also write code to generate you artifacts out of that analysis, like Excel spreadsheets, PowerPoint slides, PDF reports, any of that sort of stuff you need to take that data and then bring it out to the team and make the company better with it.
Yeah. Wow, that's impressive. I mean, it's hard to believe that a few years ago that probably couldn't even be done.
Yeah.
Um,
A year ago, that didn't work
a
nearly
year
this well.
ago.
Yeah.
Wow, that's mind-boggling. So in terms of, from a leadership perspective, this show is about relationships and driving results. How do relationships impact the success of complex AI initiatives?
Yeah. So the an enormous part here is the relationship between leadership and the lower level employees, right? So like an important thing to be talking about here is that we never want to be thinking about or talking about these systems as replacing humans.
Hmm.
Partially because they're not there yet. There are exceptionally few human jobs that we can just wholesale replace with AI at this point.
Yeah,
But also because like if you want a surefire way to get people to not cooperate with your rollout, pitch it as replacing people with AI. Um,
right.
so the right way to think about this is that we're going to take our existing team and use this amazing new technology to give them superpowers. So we're going to handle more revenue, more profit, more throughput with the existing team rather than we're going to be replacing people with robots.
Yep, I agree with that completely. AI is not eliminating people, it's helping people do better. So, what traits make for a strong client partnership when building custom AI solutions or systems?
So the issue that comes up most frequently is I will very commonly find myself saying to a client like, okay, we have this problem. Could you, in principle, write an SOP document so that we could stick a smart intern in the corner over here, hand that intern the SOP document, and then have them be able to do this task that we're talking about, right?
Right.
So we can have a capable, intelligent person, but one that just knows nothing about your business, has no real world experience in this business here. And so obviously when a process is well defined, the answer to that is typically yes. A lot of times, even with the best clients, the SOP document already exists. But at least one could exist, right? The process is unchanging and defined. The ones where it's trickiest is where that's an ill-defined process, right? It happens
Hmm.
differently whether Jim's doing it or Lisa's doing it. And it kind of involves a lot of subjective judgment that I can't even really tell you how I decide that. I just kind of work off of vibes to decide how we're going to quote that. Uh,
Right.
that's not the sort of thing that we can effectively teach an AI how to do. But a lot of that
Yeah.
overlaps with the sorts of things that you can teach humans how to do, right? So organizations that are good at empowering employees to do jobs on their own are similarly also good at empowering AIs to do these jobs.
Okay. So, I mean, kind of segue into that last comment, what leadership qualities do you value more today than you did earlier in your career?
I didn't expect to be thinking this much. Let me see here.
Yeah. Sorry.
It's okay.
I never said it
Um,
would be easy. Well, I think what you just said is, leaders that are willing to empower and
yeah.
willing to probably change um, and help their employees do better are probably leadership qualities that weren't as important pre-AI and are more so important now.
No, and I think that that goes along with systems level thinking, right? So the sort of thinking of we need a good system for how we generate quotes rather than
Hmm.
Jim's generating quotes right now and he's no good, so we need Bob to generate quotes.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Much better
Got
to
it.
have a repeatable, defined system for how we make our quotes.
Right. And how should leaders today stay grounded and strategic as AI continues evolving rapidly?
Yeah, that's a tough question because I was talking about this just the other day with Jeremy Weiss that there are so many new tools and developments coming out so frequently that
Hmm.
if you just
Yes, they
spent
are.
a handful of minutes researching into each one that you came across, you wouldn't do anything else. Like you
Yeah.
probably couldn't even spend a handful of minutes researching every one that you came across. So that means that you need to be ruthless in pruning the list of things that you're going to research and look into. So my general rule of thumb here is that I will wait until I'm seeing a new tool or a new topic or a new technique popping up in multiple places, like multiple independent places talking about a new thing before I will spend time researching it because you need some kind of powerful filter like that. Otherwise, you're
Right.
going to spend all of your time going down infinite rabbit holes.
Right. Yeah, I get that. So As AI becomes embedded across different company functions, whether it be marketing, operations, product development, what will separate companies that strategically integrate it from those that simply layer it on top?
Effectiveness in one word, right? So the
Yeah,
when it's just layered on the top, it's the email autocomplete tool that's very transparently just a layer on top of everything else. And when it's integrated into the system, like that opportunity evaluator we were talking about earlier, you can't even really see that it's in there. You can just see the company making a lot more money than they were beforehand.
right. Exactly. So, Ken, this has been such a practical and grounded conversation. I really appreciate your time and sharing your expertise. Before we wrap up, where is the best place for listeners to learn more about Laconic Tech, and where can they connect with you personally?
Yep. So laconictech.com, LACONICTECH.com is the website. And to get a hold of me, it's Ken at laconictech.com.
Awesome. And then LinkedIn, I assume you're on LinkedIn?
Yep. Also on LinkedIn.
Okay, great. We will include those links in the show notes. And before we officially close, I always like to end with a reflective question. When you look back on your career, who is one leader who had a lasting impact on how you approach problem solving today? And what is the most important lesson you took from them?
I'm going to go with Dustin Coleman, who started out as a colleague and then eventually became a, a client of mine, one of my early clients. So there, it's a matter of just taking the entrepreneurial leap, right? Going
And it's,
from full-time W-2 employment to striking out on your own.
yeah, and I can relate to that. That is a big leap. And usually there has to be somebody there supporting you, at least emotionally and professionally, if not financially. So I can appreciate that answer. So thank you for such a thoughtful conversation. I appreciate the clarity you bring to a topic that often feels overwhelming for business leaders. For our listeners, if you are enjoying these conversations, I encourage you to check our recent episodes with Dean E. Carter, CEO of Instill.ai, and Chris Reese, Senior Vice President of Neurospace. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to being in good company with you next time.
Thanks for listening to In Good Company, where relationships drive results, with Lisa Kilray. Be sure to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, stay connected and keep building relationships that drive results.